Hello and welcome back to What Happened This Weekend in MMA. I am your host, Matthew Mitchum. We will be joined by Mystic Matt later on in the show. On today's show, we will be covering this past weekend's UFC 290 International Fight Week in Las Vegas, headlined by Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. We also have an update straight from the mouth of UFC President Dana White concerning the USADA situation with Conor McGregor. And not only that, Dana himself confirmed a few other fights, and we'll get into it. And we are right back here this week with more UFC card investment information, and we've got 3 more fighters that you should be keeping your eye on. And closing out the show, we will be joined by Mystic Matt for him to give us his plays for this weekend's UFC fights in the Apex, Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. So this past weekend at UFC 290, in the main event, Alexander the Great Volkanovski defeated Yair El Pantera Rodriguez in the 3rd round via TKO, and then went off to face off with Ilia Topuria, the new #1 contender in the crowd. In the co-main event, we had fight of the night as Brandon the Assassin Baby Moreno took on the Cannibal Alexandre Pantoja in a 5-round war, where in the end Pantoja is victorious with a split decision win, claiming and new flyweight champion of the world, defeating Brandon Moreno for the 3rd time. Still Knox Dricus du Plessis shocks the world, except for himself, when he defeated Robert Whittaker this weekend via 2nd round TKO, and after the fight, the champion Israel Adesanya stepped into the octagon for a face-off, and the champ had some things to get off of his chest.
Relax. This is my African brother right here. Let's go. What's up? Let's go. Yeah. What's up? Yeah. You gonna do? Yeah, my African brother. Yeah, my African brother. What's up?
Thankfully, Israel wasn't facing off with Mike Perry. Who knows how that would have turned out. Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker went to war this weekend, where at the end of 3 rounds, we had a split decision winner for Dan the Hangman Hooker. And opening up the pay-per-view this past weekend was Bo Nickel taking on Val Woodburn, where Bo Nickel showed that he's not just a wrestler, where Bo Nickel knocked out Val Woodburn just 38 seconds into the fight. And I am personally curious who you would like to see Bo Nickel fight next, so let me know down in the comments. Other headlines from the UFC 290 prelims were Robbie Lawler, in his retirement fight, knocks out Nico Price cold in just 38 seconds into the 1st round. 3-1 underdog Denise Gomes clobbers Jasmine Jauregui just 20 seconds into round number 1. In the rematch between Alonzo Menifield and Jimmy Crute, Alonzo Menifield submits Jimmy Crute with a modified guillotine neck crank in the 2nd round. Another South African contender in Cameron Simon continues his unbeaten streak as he TKOs Terrence Mitchell in the 1st round. And lastly, flyweight Jesus Aguilar gets the fastest knockout of the night as he slept Shannon Ross with an overhand just 17 seconds into the fight. Needless to say, UFC 290 was an absolute banger, well worth the pay-per-view money this past weekend. Well done, UFC. Dana White has officially spoken on the Conor McGregor and USADA situation, and I do not want to take anything out of context. So here is exactly what Dana White has to say.
Conor tweeted a little Santa Claus emoji and said he wants to return in December. Is there any update on that possibly happening?
Listen, I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of business that needs to be handled before we talk about this. And I was doing an interview on Friday, and a bunch of fucking scumbags wrote stories that I said, fuck USADA. I don't care what USADA says. It's not even remotely close to what I said. So first of all, I'd like to say you to everybody that wrote that story, number 1. And number 2, there's a lot of stuff that has to go on before he fights. So it's not even, my point was, No matter who's talking about it, whether it's USADA or whoever and this and that, it's not even worth talking about right now. Everybody wants to keep bringing it up so that pieces of shit can write stories like that. Never did I say I don't give a shit what USADA thinks or disrespecting USADA or anything like that. It doesn't matter what anybody says. I don't know how this whole thing's going to play out. Let's wait and see.
In other fight news, it was announced this past week that Francis Ngannou was likely to take on Tyson Fury, and we would be getting some form of news soon. So just like Dana White, what Dana White does, he announces John Jones versus Stipe Miocic in November, Madison Square Garden. That is going to be an absolute banger of a card and likely John Jones's retirement fight. A few weeks ago, it was announced that Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk wanted to fight each other inside of the octagon. Personally, I was like, this is just a joke. I'm not taking this serious at all. But a reporter actually asked Dana White relatively recently, and this was Dana White's response to asking how real it was.
And then finally, how real is Zuckerberg versus Musk? Because now we're hearing that like Musk's mom doesn't want him to fight. Like, how real is this thing?
It's very real. It's very real.
Thank you.
I'm just calling it right now. This is going to be some form of Mark Zuckerberg technology. They're not actually going to fight. I'm calling it right now. Prove me wrong. And if you are into UFC card investment information, I've got 3 fighters right here to let you know to keep your eye on, or maybe you should be purchasing right now because of where they are at in their career. So I'm going to give you the fighter name, their rookie class set, and why I personally think you should be buying them. So up first, he fought this past weekend. He is your new flyweight champion of the world, and that is Alexandre Pantoja. Alexandre Pantoja rookie card set is going to be 2020 tops. So right before Panini came out, so you're going to look for 2020 top sets of Alexandre Pantoja if you want to find his rookie card. And why I think you should be buying Alexandre Pantoja is obviously he just won the title this past weekend. His prices are still relatively cheap for being a champion. And in my opinion, he's going to hold that title for a little while. If you just look at his record and who he's beat, he's already beat most people in the top 5. So in my opinion, Alexandre Pantoja is going to be your flyweight champion for a while, and he is just going to continue to beat contenders as they rise. Up next, fighter number 2, we've got Still Knox Dricus Du Plessis. Also fought this past weekend. His rookie card set is going to be 2022 Panini. The reason that I think you should be buying Dricus Du Plessis is obviously he just surprised everyone last night, dominating Robert Whittaker. And after the face-offs in the octagon this past weekend, it looks like his next fight is going to be a title shot. He might just shock you again. And lastly, number 3, we've got Jack Della Maddalena. Jack Della was supposed to fight this past weekend, but 2 opponents withdrawed. Jack Della's rookie card set is this year, 2023 UFC Panini. And obviously, Jack should have fought this past weekend, but after 2 different opponent withdrawals, the fight was scrapped. UFC seems very particular about who they want to match Jack up with, which tells me he is going to continue his winning streak. Hopefully, Jack gets another opponent in these next few weeks. I do know that he did put out a tweet saying that he's going to stay in the area, and hopefully he can get a fight for this weekend or the next. But if he doesn't, look forward to Jack fighting in September on the Australia card. And just being 26 years old, that gives him plenty of time to grow. Jack Della's rookie card set is this year right now, so they are in abundance everywhere, making Jack Della Maddalena an excellent buy. Which brings us to this upcoming weekend's UFC fights in Las Vegas taking place at the Apex. I mean, I guess we've got some fights, but let's be honest, they're not the best. But we've got, in the main event, the 41-year-old Holly Holm tries to hold her place in the ranks as she takes on the 10th-ranked Mayra Bueno Silva. In the co-main event, we've got Albert Duraev taking on the Iron Turtle, Jung Young Park. We also have the returning big-ticket Walt Harris. He's going to be taking on Josh Parisian. We've got the certified CDL license holder Norma Dumont taking on Stockton's own Chelsea Chandler in her second fight in the UFC. We've got an USADA approved absolute banger as Ottoman Azatar takes on Francisco Prado, where someone is surely getting snoozed early. And opening the main card, we've got another fight sure to not go the distance as T-Rex Terrence McKinney takes on Black Wolf Nazim Sadykhov. And if you don't know Nazim Sadykhov, watch out this weekend. And with that being said, let's bring in Mystic Matt to get his 3-leg of the week, his underdog of the week, and his prop of the week.
Hey Matthew, how you doing this week, brother?
You are just too quick with it, man. I didn't even get the chance to ask you how you were doing. You're a guest on this show. I should be asking you how you were doing. But personally, I already know how you're doing. You have to be riding high off of the picks that you gave us on the show here this past weekend. Am I right?
Without a doubt, man. Without a doubt. As you see, I have my cheddar chain on. That is what I wear on my winning weeks when I can hit a sick parlay. It happened this past weekend. Can't be too mad. But as far as the picks that I gave here on the channel last week, I gave Bo Nickel under 1.5. That was pretty much guaranteed to happen for the most part. The underdog of the week, Alexandre Pantoja, did hit. So that's always great. And we were a split decision away from our 3-leg hit, and 2 of the 3 legs hit, and the split decision was Jalen Turner versus Dan Hooker. I did pick Jalen Turner to win the fight. It was a super close fight, but Dan Hooker ended up getting the nod. But what can we do? It is what it is. We can't win them all. I wish we could, though.
For sure, close indeed, man. But no one is perfect. We'll see if we can cash it this upcoming week. But let's get into it. I've already told the people the fights on the main card. They're just looking for your best plays for this upcoming weekend. So your 3-leg, your underdog of the week, and your prop of the week.
Sounds good, man. I can do that. I'm going to start with the 3-leg just like I did last week. And the first leg on the parlay is going to be Aileen Perez versus Ashley Evans Smith. It's in reality the battle of the OnlyFans models. But truly, Ashley Evans Smith is super inactive. And when she does fight, she doesn't impress me. Her claim to fame, if you will, was beating Fallon Fox before the UFC. And besides that, she hasn't done anything else for the most part. Aileen Perez, on the other hand, is truly, in my opinion, the younger, hungrier fighter. I'm taking Aileen Perez to for sure get the victory over Ashley Evans Smith this upcoming weekend for leg number 1 of the parlay. And for leg number 2 this week, give me the CDL license holder, as you said earlier, the dump truck driver, Norma Dumont, to get the dub over Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea Chandler is a relatively newcomer to the UFC. She's only had 1 fight, and personally, I believe she's just a tad bit overhyped being from Stockton. Everyone seems to like her. But Norma Dumont seems to turn down all oncomers, and she's done nothing to make me not pick her. Norma Dumont gets the dub this weekend. And for leg number 3, we are going Holly Holm to defeat Mayra Bueno Silva. Obviously, Holly Holm is great at managing distance, and Mayra Bueno Silva tends to stand there and call people on, and it just doesn't look good. Holly Holm's not playing those games. Holly Holm's going to stay at distance, pick you apart for the most part. If you want to know exactly how I think this fight goes, watch Mayra Bueno Silva versus Manon Fior. I think this fight looks pretty much just like that. But with Holly Holm being Manon Fior, Holly Holm gets the dub this weekend, and just showing that even though she's 41 years old, she still has the skills and the tools to beat most people at 135. And that's going to be the final leg on the 3-leg this week.
Hey, man, when you put it like that, it all really makes sense. And I personally think that we're going to hit that this week. What do you got for the dog this week, man?
Truly, Matthew, dogs this week are super tough. I am nowhere near as confident this week as I was last week. The dogs were truly barking last week. Not so much this week. But if I had to pick a dog this week, I'm going to go Albert Duraev. I still think that he gets it done. He's going up against Young Park, the Iron Turtle. The Iron Turtle recently has been trying to wrestle a whole lot. And honestly, that's Albert Duraev's expertise. And I just don't think Iron Turtle's going to be able to continue to get him down and hold him down, which makes this be a on-the-feet striking fight. And Albert Duraev has shown in his last few fights that he can handle himself on the feet last fought Chidi and Jaquani. So, and he beat him by decision. So Albert Duraev can for sure handle himself on the feet. I'm going Albert Duraev to stuff the takedowns and box up the Iron Turtle this week. Give me Albert Duraev as the dog to get the decision win over the Iron Turtle, Chung Young Park. Albert Duraev for the dub as the dog.
I couldn't agree more with you, man. The dogs aren't barking as loud this week as they were this past week. But let's see if we can cash 2 in a row on dogs of the week, because you did cash Alexandre Pantoja last week. And I do know that props aren't open most sports books, but let me know what's going to be something that you're going to have your eye on when props do drop this week.
Hell yeah. I've been waiting on this one, brother. I cannot wait for props to open on my sports books that I personally bet at. My prop of this week is going to be Nazim Sadykhov to knock out Terrence McKinney. I heard you say in the show earlier, if you don't know Nazim Sadykhov, watch out this weekend. And I agree. Nazim Sadykhov has multiple knockouts later on in fights. He's shown to have a good chin to this point. He has good boxing, good head movement. And as I said, multiple later round knockouts, which implies that he has decent cardio, at least long enough to last into the third round and get a knockout. And he's going to be taking on T-Rex Terrence McKinney. That is truly a handful for about 3 minutes and then falls off an absolute cliff. If Nazim Sadykhov can last more than just withstand the onslaught more than 3 minutes, he's going to knock out Terrence McKinney without a doubt. So I am going prop of this week, Nazim Sadykhov to knock out Terrence McKinney. I don't know what it's going to drop out. I can't imagine that it's going to be too tasty, if I'm going to be honest. I believe Nazim Sadykhov already the favorite this week. But that being said, Nazim Sadykhov to knock out Terrence McKinney is going to be my prop of the week. Can't wait for it to open. Hopefully they give me a little bit, just a little bit of juice on it, just a little bit, and I'll be happy.
Mystic Matt, it looks like you're going to do it again this week. That sounds like it's going to hit, or at least the way you're making it sound to me, it sounds like it's going to hit. But with that being said, we truly appreciate you stopping by here again this week. We'll see you next week. Is there anything that you want to let us know before we let you go?
Well, Matthew, as always, I truly thank you very much for having me on here. I know I've only been on here one other week, but it's going to continue. The thank yous are going to continue to come. Thank you for having me on here. But as I said last week, make sure that you watch the Golden Octagon MMA podcast every UFC fight week on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This past week, I was yelling it at the top of the roofs to everyone. I said it multiple times on the channel this past week. Denise Gomes is going to end up cracking Yasmin Jauregui, and it happened. It was a plus 1,100, and I hit it. Plus 1,100 for Denise Gomes to knock out Yasmin Jauregui. I believe that's how you say it. But yeah, I cashed it. I told people all week, and if you would have listened to the podcast, y'all would have heard it, and maybe you just would have put just a 2 or 3 of $5 on it and at least made yourself some money this past weekend, like your boy did, rocking his cheddar chain over here.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. Congratulations on the hit, Mystic Matt. And you heard the man. If you want to know props like this that he's been telling y'all about, make sure you check out the Golden Octagon MMA podcast every Wednesday of UFC fight weeks at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think you should check it out. He seems to be doing pretty good. But with that being said, we truly appreciate every single one of y'all for stopping by here. Hit a thumbs up button on your way out. That's going to be all for what happened this past weekend in MMA. I am your host, Matthew Mitchum. Have a good night.